We are recording, I believe. I am Gwart. I am here with Eric Wall. This is my first ever podcast, so we're gonna do this very live. We are recording on January 10th, the morning after we got faked out by Gary Gensler. But hopefully this afternoon we're getting an ETF. Eric, where were you? What were you doing, rather, when the ETF was falsely announced?
Yeah, I deleted that tweet. I've actually gone and deleted the tweet, and it's not so much that I didn't think it was funny. Like, I was literally on the toilet when this happened, and I took a picture of my legs, obviously sitting in a toilet position. And then 5 minutes later, Gary Gensler tweets that the SEC got hacked. And I wanted to leave the tweet up because I thought it was a hilarious, moment in time, a snapshot out of time, like something funny that happened. But something else happened that day that I wasn't prepared for, which was that I'm gonna say something about Hex and Richard Hart, which I always do every single podcast, but we're going to keep it brief. Anyway, so Richard Hart has teamed up with a very reputable law firm called Quinn that I think Elon Musk has used in the past to defend him, basically, in the trial that he has, where he's getting accused for misappropriation of funds. So he's lawyered up quite significantly and is making a big brag moment out of fighting the SEC. And I don't want to have two tweets where the hexicans are comparing. This is Richard teaming up with a reputable law firm fighting the SEC, and this is you literally with your pants down celebrating the SEC approving the ETF. Just I can't live with that. So I had to delete it, and I hope no one finds the pictures.
I screenshotted it, but out of respect, I will not share. Well,
you can inscribe it as an ordinal. Maybe it'll sell for something.
That would almost certainly sell. Or actually, I have no idea. I have no idea if that would sell. I feel like the tweets don't do so well, I was informed, inscribed, or at least when they were made into NFTs. Didn't somebody buy a tweet for $1 million? Wasn't it Jack Dorsey's tweet? And I don't know. That's probably very close to worthless now. So
by the way,
I don't know.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. So this is a new medium for you. This is the first time. This is
yeah, that's correct.
No one's going to see your face, but this is the first time that they're hearing your voice. And I feel like maybe I should interview you for a bit before we get started. I think maybe, I've been on podcasts in crypto since there have been podcasts in crypto, and you have not. And I don't think that people even are going to recognize your voice.
No, that's true. They won't.
So why don't I think people are more curious about who the fuck are you and how come, can I give my analysis of the sort of the Gwart phenomenon?
You certainly may. And I will dispute it. But go ahead.
Is it okay if I insult you at the very essence of your soul?
Of course.
Okay. you paused for a moment, so I'm thinking maybe I should.
No,
go
I
gentle.
expected nothing less.
Okay, so I have lost a couple of friends. They say that they tell me that I had this one friend, and we were sort of climbing. This was way back, and we were sort of climbing the social ranks of the underground rave scene of southern Sweden together. And then he just cut me off, and he wouldn't hang out with me anymore. And then many years later, after I became a big deal in crypto, he started reaching out to me again. I was like, but why did you cut me out back then when we were going to Berghain and we were on a mission? And he said, well, Eric, you always got to find that spot in people, their weak point, and then you just got to go and shove your finger in that hole. So I have a tendency to touch people where they feel, you know. I make people
Go ahead, spit it
uncomfortable.
out.
So here's the Gwort phenomenon. Okay, so the Gwort phenomenon is basically that you have this anon Twitter character that is making all these references, like all these references about different people in the crypto space and specific protocols that they're working on, different issues in crypto that people are trying to solve. Like, it seems like someone who's in the know, but not just in the know of like what technical challenges the industry faces, but also in the know of which different people are sort of championing each different technology narrative, and also sort of is able to identify the awkwardness and some socially comedic situations between those people. So it's the reason that became popular is not because because everyone started saying like Gwort is the funniest account on Twitter. But that was not actually what was happening. I'm not saying that you're not funny. Perfect, you are perfectly funny, like one of the funnier Twitter accounts. But what happened was that people wanted to show, like, it became like if you thought that Gwort was funny, it meant that you had all the necessary context in order to get that joke. So it became like, I think Gwort is funny, and then the next guy's like, well, I understand Gwort humor too. I also think it's funny, and then everyone just started like piling on to being a Gwort stan, and that's sort of how the thing came to be. So they're using you as like a signal to boost themselves more than they're actually complimenting you.
Okay, this was not nearly as offensive as I thought it would be. Is that
okay,
it?
Well, that was it. That was it.
Well, this is like quite a generous interpretation of what I do. I mean, yes, I would consider myself to be deeply unserious on Twitter. I think to the extent that I have done anything outside of the box, it's that a lot of what I saw in terms of the criticism or trolling on Twitter was focused on very easy targets in a sense. Like, and not to put you on blast here, but like, for example, Richard Hart is a very easy target. Right now, I think you really deeply embedded yourself in that one, right? But I think it's not hard to make jokes or to chastise FTX. It's not hard to go after SBF and Luna and Terra, and these are things that what I saw, and maybe I'm being a bit generous to myself here, but what I saw was oftentimes in the industry, I felt like we would position ourselves such that we would point to Do Kwon and say, this is an example of a bad actor. And what we're doing over here is the good actor, right? Or and our in group, we're the ones building, we're the ones innovating. And these people sort of got almost and like, for what it's worth, you have to understand, I'm not like deeply critical, right? Like this stuff doesn't offend me, right? But I thought that there was sort of this almost these like sacred cows where people wouldn't really question the first principles thinkers, and that, like, you can go after FTX, but like, don't you dare go after a mechanism designer. And so I'm sort of somewhere in the middle where it's kind of like, I find it's funnier to troll about the people who are very, very serious, right? And I'm not very serious. So I don't know if that provides any context. I mean, I think your read is sort of spot on. It's ironic because most of the people who probably find my humor, I don't know, edgy or satirical, they're all like much more technical than I am. But I've been able to find sort of what you're talking about, those, I don't know, maybe those little nuances to what they do or what they say. So, yeah, I was not at all offended by what you said to offend me. So if that's the worst that I get, I mean, this is not bad at all.
Okay, well, I was just briefing you. I don't know how easily insulted you are, but I think like from a historical context, the character makes sense because if we zoom out, like maybe this is not true anymore, but there was like some months after the FTX collapse where we had these, Sequoia, Paradigm, what's that one in the Singaporean fund that invested also in FTX. So you have
Temasek?
Temasek,
Temasek?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Temasek, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you have these like massive behemoths and like pillars of the industry and backing, the most legit projects in crypto, and then it all turns out to be a scam, and then Richard Hart turns out to be the lesser, like all that year I'm chasing after Richard Hart, but I'm missing like
Exactly.
the
Yes.
biggest scams that are
Yes.
right in front of me. So it from that like historical context, it makes sense that maybe we should have like jesters questioning even like the most legit actors in the space. Like, so there should be more criticism and scrutiny of what are we doing on the home turf. So I think like from that historical perspective and lens, the Gord character is a much needed one and a much welcome one. So for that reason, I'm happy to do this first episode with you. So it's an honor,
And
Gord.
no, I'm glad you said it's an honor, because I was going to say that it must be an honor to be my first guest. But in all seriousness, I mean, I can't think of somebody better to talk to. I think you have a tremendous amount of knowledge, and it goes way back, and that's what I think that is very good for my first podcast. We'll see if I'm good at podcasting, because it will lay the groundwork for what I am hoping to do with this. So I can't think of anything better, and I do appreciate you coming on. So to that end, how is Taproot Wizards? What are you working on? What are you trying to do right now?
That's a big one.
You can break that down.
Yeah, so I mean, Taproot Wizards is Taproot Wizards started actually before Ordinals even existed. It was an idea that I and Udi Wertheimer, the infamous Mossad agent, bald man on Twitter, it was an idea that basically, there are different flavors of Bitcoiners, but there was only really one flavor of Bitcoiner that had a very visible footprint in like the crypto space. It would be the laser eyes, and they said the same things. They made their profile pictures looking the same way, and they sort of banded together. But it's not sure, and I think it's proven now to be not true that is the largest group of people that are Bitcoiners. And there was this excellent presentation by the owner of Bitrefill, where he was at a Bitcoin conference, and he had like a presentation where he went through the statistics of the wallets, the Bitcoin wallets that make purchases on the Bitrefill site. And he asked the audience, what do you guys think is the most popular Bitcoin wallet that buys stuff off of our website? And people were raising their hands and saying like names of different wallets that they were fans of, and these would be like the most popular Bitcoin wallets in the Bitcoin space. And it's not that the most famous one like came last or was only mentioned by one or two people. It wasn't mentioned at all, and it wasn't only that it wasn't mentioned; it wasn't even known. So the name of the most popular wallet that makes Bitcoin transactions is a wallet that's called Exodus. At least if you look at Bitrefill data. So there's a wallet called Exodus. I think it might be a multi-coin wallet, like supports multiple cryptocurrencies.
Wallet, yeah.
You have one?
Yeah, it's a desktop wallet, and actually, it's a browser wallet as well. But I've had an Exodus wallet for a long time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that maybe speaks to how much of a weird bird or whatever actually a normal bird is the point actually. So our analysis was basically that There is a group of people that are using Bitcoin, and they are Bitcoiners, but they don't necessarily resonate with the laser eyes, and it's just that there is no other way to show, like, how do you show that you absolutely love Bitcoin, but you don't like what sort of the laser eyes, the message that the laser eyes are propagating? Like, how do you get behind the flag of Bitcoin without saying that you eat food in a specific way, and you have guns, and you have all these weird, like, specific dietary politics, and way to be a human that goes way beyond being a Bitcoiner. Like, how do you signal that you love Bitcoin but you don't adhere to maximalism? So we were thinking about, like, how do we give that group a face, and we, like, thought about the old the meme that actually the ad on the old Bitcoin Reddit, the R Bitcoin subreddit, which used to be the home of Bitcoin for a long time, actually, up until like 2017. Between 2013 and until 2017, that was like the home of Bitcoin, R Bitcoin. You would even have like core developers go in there, and they would have their specific flair, so you would see that that's a core developer in the conversation right now. So the ad of the Bitcoin subreddit for a time was this picture of a wizard that it said magic internet money, join us. And then that ended up becoming, not only, I think it was the most popular ad for any subreddit on Reddit ever. So the Bitcoin subreddit grew massively, and lots of new people became Bitcoiners just through that ad. And it was kind of playful, joyful, didn't take itself very seriously. It was the age of experimentation. Bitcoin is this magic internet money. Let's use it. Let's see what we can do with it. And that's like diametrically opposed to what Bitcoin maximalism represents today, where they're basically saying that Bitcoin is a finished product, and it's already won, and it's just, you just have to. And a couple of years ago, they were actually just saying that there's a mathematical formula inside the Bitcoin protocol itself that is going to make Bitcoin reach $1 trillion if you just wait for the issuance schedule to keep halve. Then just the math of it just means that the Bitcoin price is going to go to infinity. And there were people doing advanced econometric research on this, proving this to be not just a theory but a fact. And you had like the largest influencers and podcasters buying into that. So Bitcoin is obviously like not perfect, and even like some of the most beloved and reputable core developers like Gregory Maxwell says that the biggest threat to Bitcoin is that if people at some point think that Bitcoin is finished and complete and doesn't need to change, if it ossifies prematurely, that is the biggest risk to Bitcoin, according to Greg Maxwell. And now there's a lot of people that are speaking about ossification, and they don't even know who Gregory Maxwell is. For those that don't know, listeners who don't know, Gregory Maxwell is like the Dumbledore of Bitcoin. He's like this, just been around for such a long time, has this big,
you don't
big
think
beard.
Peter Wheel is the Dumbledore of Bitcoin?
No, like Gregory Maxwell had he was Peter Willie implemented Taproot, for example, but it was Gregory Maxwell and Andrew Polster that invented it. So Gregory Maxwell, I think, has been the originator of some like way more powerful ideas.
He's a genius, like certifiably, I think.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. He's one of the smartest men that I've like encountered on the internet. Anyway, so we thought that we just want to like give a face. We want basically to change the culture of Bitcoin. We think that in order for Bitcoin as an asset to excel, thrive, the only way to do it is to change the social layer around Bitcoin. And the only way to change the social layer of Bitcoin, well, the leading theory that me and this Mossad agent have at the moment, is that we have to. So we're gonna. We've tried every possible thing. We're gonna have to try to do something extreme, because all the other things that we tried has failed. So the thing that we're doing now is that we're going to try to make the Bitcoin maximalists hates Bitcoin so much that they're willing to change it. So we have to work on the insides of the consensus rules, so that they are going to have to be the ones that start to promote change. Because right now they're the ones saying, Bitcoin is perfect the way it is. It never needs to change. The protocol is perfect, and this is just how it is now. And no small change, like nothing is going to make it into Bitcoin. You can always innovate on top of Lightning, and you can make Lightning better and stuff like that. But we're never going to change Bitcoin the way it is. So how do we break the cracks? There's this quote by Leonard Cohen from a beautiful song where he says, "There is a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in." So we have to create a crack in
that
this.
Goes pretty hard.
Yeah, it does. The song's good also. So we basically have to cook them out. So if we and by the way, I don't want to take credit for like everything that's happening with ordinals. I've tried, like, me and Uri didn't initially take credit for the things that were happening with ordinals. Like, what happened was that when the ordinals protocol was brand new, there were like a total of, like, let's say 100 ordinals that had ever been inscribed. That's the time when we discovered it. This was late January. I started tweeting about it, and then at inscription number 652, then we joined forces with a mining pool called Luxor, and we broadcasted to them a non-standard transaction. So this is a transaction that you cannot, for Ethereum people, this may be something that they have to wrap their heads around.
I thought this is outside of the mempool, right?
Yeah, so this is we had to broadcast a non-standard. We can't you can't broadcast non-standard transactions. So non-standard means the blockchain considers it as valid, the full nodes considers it as valid, but nodes running on the network will not propagate the transaction. They will not include it into their own blocks, and will not send it away to other miners. So it won't get into a block unless there's a miner that says, fuck the standardness rules, I'm going to put this in because it still has consensus validity. So what we wanted to do, the policy rule that we wanted to break was, there's a maximum size currently in Bitcoin that's like around 400 kilobytes per transaction. We wanted to get the full 4 megabyte, a full 4 megabyte transaction that takes up the space of an entire block, and just make that be a JPEG. So we worked together with Luxor. We got this JPEG filling up a whole block, and that sort of demonstrates that the entirety of the Bitcoin blockchain is, you can basically use it as call data in Ethereum. Like it's arbitrary. Right. It's an arbitrary storage pool. So I think that was the best way, like the highest signal way to get that message through, that an entire Bitcoin block can be a JPEG. So we did that, and that like sort of put so much, and it wasn't, I don't want to even, like even the marketing wasn't done by us. It was done by the enraged laser eye maxis that hated this so much that they made sure that everyone in crypto saw this event. So like triggering the maxis has been like the marketing strategy for Taproot Wizards. And then, they've just hated seeing Bitcoin being used this way. Like they hate JPEGs, they hate NFTs, they hate shitcoins. But the Ordinals protocol, like now, it allows you to use Bitcoin as an arbitrary data storage. So you can create like any meta layer protocol that you want in there. This is not something new, by the way. Did you know, for example, that USDT Tether used to be only on Bitcoin as
the
tokens?
Omni layer, right? Yeah.
Correct, yeah. So like creating like ERC-like type tokens on top of Bitcoin is not something new. the Ordinals protocol just made it a lot easier to create protocols that required larger transactions. Before, you really try to you had to sort of fit these transactions in like usually you used op returns, and you had like 80 bytes that you could put inside a transaction. But now you have basically infinite. You have the full block is up for grabs, right? Within the standardness rules, it's still 400 kilobytes. So we're talking about like orders of magnitudes of available storage for arbitrary data in blocks that was enabled by the SegWit and Taproot upgrades. So the situation in Bitcoin is basically now changed. So what has happened since then is that there's been one guy, his name is Domo Data. He wrote the standard for BRC20 tokens. I think Tarun made like an interesting observation that we're so fucking lazy that we can't even come up with our own name for these token standards. So it's we know that there's ERC20s, so let's just call the tokens on Bitcoin BRC20s, even though it just like has no real.
I mean, it's catchy
like,
at the very least.
Yeah, like people understand what it is immediately, but it doesn't really the acronym itself like doesn't really. Bitcoin request for comment 20, like it doesn't really make any sense. Like nothing like that exists. So I mean, our plan. So what happened? Just because we made this 4 megabyte block, and we were the two Bitcoiners that were sort of visible and well known to the Bitcoin community that was sort of promoting this type of activity. We didn't promote like any specific NFT or any specific anything specific that you can buy or any particular token, but we were sort of promoting the idea that hey, Bitcoin block space is undervalued, and we have people like Peter Todd, who's also one of a very influential core developer, that has been so worried about like the declining security budget of Bitcoin due to the halvenings. This is what most people ask me about from the Ethereum side. Like, how can you be serious about Bitcoin when you know that it doesn't look like you have enough fee revenue generation?
Right.
Your chain is not going to be secure. You're going to have to you're going to have to introduce tail emission, and you're going to basically have you're going to have to break the 21 million cap. So if we can, so these meta protocols that actually do create demand for the Bitcoin block space can save Bitcoin in the sense that, well, now that there's demand for that block space, there's users paying transaction fees. Now we have a security budget for Bitcoin. So I mean, we were sort of playing around that. Look, this whole thing is saving Bitcoin. I think like at its current stage, it's still quite immature. Like these, the demand for like creating these tokens and auctioning them off sort of comes in volatile spikes, and it's very hard to model your revenue as a miner when the fees are volatile. But the more types of meta layer protocols that are invented, the more we have of this that are sort of idiosyncratic, those highs and lows of block space demand are going to eventually like level out. So we just want more of that until we basically create a sustainable security budget system for Bitcoin. But the more important goal with this has basically been to like how can we make the laser eyes hate what is happening, like hate Bitcoin so much that they're gonna like betray their ideals of ossification and immutability and actually go towards the direction of changing Bitcoin. And there's also like this governance stalemate inside the Bitcoin protocol where the developers, the core developers that used to introduce consensus changes, like Peter Willey, like Gregory Maxwell and Andrew Polstra, they have sort of retired in a way. Like Peter Willey recently gave up his commit access to the Bitcoin Core GitHub repo, and Gregory Maxwell is like not even doesn't even participate much. So like the elders have sort of left the room, and you have these sort of more nervous people at the wheel of the Bitcoin Core GitHub repo, and all of them are like deadly afraid of making any controversial change to Bitcoin.
Right.
So they're just not doing anything, and they're waiting for the community to inform them of what consensus change needs to happen. So they're like really, really skittish. And what the community is saying is that we want ossification. And the community that is saying that are people that are using custodial Lightning wallets without actually knowing that they're custodial. And they think that Bitcoin is fine. Like they think that Bitcoin doesn't have any scalability issues, that Lightning is perfect because they're using, like when you download an app on your phone that says Lightning, how do you know whether or not that's a custodial or non-custodial app? It doesn't say. If it's a custodial one, it's not going to say this is a custodial wallet and you may lose all your funds here, because that would be bad for business. So like Wallet of Satoshi, Blue Wallet, those other custodial wallets that have been like standing for 95% of the transactional volumes for the Lightning Network. There's been a bunch, and you can just go to my Twitter account. There was recently one guy that like came into a thread and he said, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like I'm using Lightning for several years. I never had a single issue with inbound channel capacity or anything like that. And I was like, can you send me an invoice so that I can pay you? Or like, can you tell me how much inbound liquidity you have? And then like when he tried to generate it, his wallet threw an error. And that was because that Blue Wallet had discontinued custodial support for their Lightning wallet like a year back, and now his wallet doesn't work anymore. So of course he didn't have any issues with the Lightning Network because he had never used the Lightning Network in his entire life. And that has been sort of the community that has representing their interest to the core developers, is that everything is fine. It's because they're not frankly aware of what issues even exist in Bitcoin. So we've needed to do in order to like we are so deluded that we actually think that we are saving Bitcoin by spamming the blockchain with JPEGs. We're not the ones actually that should take the credit or blame for this. We've just kickstarted this sort of phenomena, but it's mostly like Asian buyers that are speculating on random BRC20 tokens that stand for like 90% of the ordinals activity. That we didn't have anything to do with that except like making ordinals a popular thing. But I think I think that we can smoke him out. I think like Luke Dash Jr. Is when he's not talking about like eating
pretty
cats.
Mad right now.
He's pretty mad. He had a rough year though. He lost all his Bitcoin. Like his computer got hacked and he lost all his Bitcoin. So he had to take a job, and he took a job. He basically revived his old mining pool called the Eligius pool. That quite interestingly, the Eligius mining pool is the thing it's famous for is that they used to put prayers on the blockchain. With each block that they mined, you have like a Coinbase field where you can put some arbitrary data, and Luke would put his Catholic prayers in there. And that is the pool that he's now reviving, together with funding from Jack Dorsey, the previous CEO of Twitter, founder of Twitter. And they are like aggressively trying to filter ordinals from and inscriptions from entering the blockchain. However,
they've given 3 fee tiers now, and I think if you want to be unholy, you can direct your template toward the one that does allow inscription. So, but yes, I've seen what I've certainly been following this.
Yeah, and I kind of regret even talking about them because it's so clear that they're going to fail. I think they know that they're going to fail, and I think that they're probably using it as a marketing tactic to be like, we're the good guys that try to save the blockchain from spam. In the end, they're not going to do anything of that. They may mine like 5% of the total blocks that they make over the next year, may be censoring ordinals, but it's just like not incentive compatible. So it's more like, I think it's more like a marketing stunt that they're doing basically.
Well, let me ask something really quick. Are you encouraged at all to see what they are either doing or saying they're going to do with Stratum V2 and I don't know, what is it, like direct payout to miners through, I mean, they say Lightning. I don't know how feasible this is right now, but is it like direct Coinbase payouts to miners individually? I mean, is this something like, let's look on the bright side for 1 second. Is this something that is encouraging? I mean, maybe this is not economically viable over the long run, and I think that you're right that this probably is not. What are your thoughts on that quickly?
Yeah, so the direct payouts for miners, which basically means like when you create a block, the Coinbase transaction will when the moment that the block is mined, the correct hashers that contributed to that block will be getting the payment.
Right.
So it won't be like the payments go to a pool or a controller address that then distributes it later to the contributing parties. But that is actually, in my opinion, the far least interesting aspect of Stratum V2. Stratum V2 is a protocol that allows individual hashers, if they find the hash that solves the difficulty target, so it's a valid hash for a block, then they get to select which transactions are going to be in that block. So they're basically creating the blocks. They're the builders of the blocks. I would say this is like philosophically going in a super valid direction. Like it's decentralizing block building away from these pools to the individual miners that are hashing on those blocks. That's obviously very, very, very powerful. However, and I know that you may want to get into this deeper in a bit, so maybe this is a nice segue. But the more MEV that exists on a chain, the less likely it is that you as a miner alone, in Kazakhstan with your hash rate, is going to be doing the block construction.
Right.
Because if there's MEV, then it means that you need some level of sophistication in order to mine a valid block. Basically, you have to run more sophisticated software. So the MEV trend is sort of making the Stratum V2 idea sort of unviable, because unless we get something like MEV boost in Bitcoin, where these individual miners can actually find very valuable blocks on their own, the way the whole journey that we have to take in Ethereum, where basically have, but even then, like even with MEV boost, you're still gonna fall into the same trap as Ethereum, where you're basically gonna have, you still need MEV searchers, and then you need relays. And what if the relay is now, so you have MEV boost, but what if the relay is like doing OFAC censorship? Then those specific transactions are not going to get through. So I love Stratum V2 as an idea, but the idea of Stratum V2 would not survive in a high MEV generating environment on Bitcoin.
Yeah. So, what do you see as, so you've talked about this, I would like to dig in a bit more. Okay, so on Ethereum, most MEV, I'm sort of generalizing right now, most MEV is generated through the interaction with smart contracts. Like, for all intents and purposes, it is because of this rich statefulness, right? And it is not generated typically through what we may think of as peer-to-peer interaction, right? So like if we can put this in the context of Bitcoin, if I send you Bitcoin and I send it directly to your, wallet address, typically there is not intermediation there that can be profitable, right? Because it's a UTX. So I'm signing over, I mean, once again, I'm simplifying this, but I'm signing over the rights for you to now sign over those coins. This is directly peer-to-peer. This is not exactly what happens on Ethereum. And most of Ethereum MEV is generated as a result of all of these different actors, right? Vying to see transactions before other people, front run, back run, sandwich. I'm very interested on your thoughts. So maybe I'll segment this into two questions. What do you see as the future of MEV on Bitcoin? And does this require rich statefulness on the L1? And maybe an extension of that question, how feasible is this? So I don't know if that was 2 or 3 questions, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I think let's use. I asked Phil Diane about like what's the actual proper definition of MEV, but I think let's use one that's a little bit more practical for this context. So let's use a definition of MEV that is the amount of money that you can make by creating a block, mining a block that goes beyond just picking the most valuable transactions that you see in the mempool.
Right.
So if you do anything else, like if you're just picking transactions, like, okay, I like this one, it pays a high fee per the kilobyte that it takes up, and I like this one, and you're just sorting them basically by fee rate. Let's call MEV everything that allows you to generate more revenue than just doing that.
Right.
Keep in mind though that even sorting transactions by their fee rate would have been called MEV in Bitcoin previously, or actually it's still called MEV now, because in Bitcoin the way that the policy for Bitcoin nodes worked was that the first transaction that you see is the one that you're going to mine. It's called the first seen policy.
Right.
So Bitcoin miners wouldn't even, like, if you're sending 2 transactions, you're sending both of them to me, and in one of them you're paying $5 as a transaction fee, and in the other you're paying $5,000. The miner would still honor your first transaction because he saw it first, and then when he sees another one that's conflicting, then he just like, no, I'm not doing that. And this was the reason that the Bitcoin miners had such a policy, was because it was believed by early Bitcoiners that it was in the best interest of the protocol to have, like, this was before Lightning and such solutions existed, where it was very cumbersome to receive a payment if you had to wait for a block. And in Bitcoin, a block can take anything between a couple of seconds or multiple hours. Usually takes around 10 minutes. But it's not that uncommon. Like, I saw it yesterday, a block that took like over an hour, over 2 hours maybe, I think it even was. So that if that's like you're trying to pay a merchant, 2 hours gonna fuck up your day. Like, you're sitting at your computer, you want to know if your payment has gone through. Like that doesn't really work. So what they did was they had this first seen policy. So the first transaction that you see in the mempool would be the one that you honored, and that allowed for low value transactions. You could see a transaction coming in as a merchant, and then you'd be like, oh, well, most miners are going to mine this one. Like 90, what I've seen is like 99.99%. This was back in the day, would honor this first seen policy. So that was how Bitcoin transactions were done. Now so how the Bitcoin protocol evolved from that was that there was a new transaction flag that was called RBF, which meant replaced by fee, so that people could voluntarily opt in to the ability to replace their transaction with a more high fee paying transaction. So if you were worried as a user that your transaction would get stuck because the fees got higher in the next block and your transaction basically never got mined and you could never like replace it, they had a specific flag called the RBF flag, which allowed you to broadcast a transaction with a higher fee, and then the highest paying fee transaction would get included. Now, there was one pool that just said, fuck it to all these first seen rules and didn't even care about the RBF flags. It just mined the transactions with the highest fee, and it threw out the first seen ones like that. The only one that was doing that was the Eligius pool, the Luke Jr.'s original pool. That was the only one that was doing it. But that was enough of a pool, like, for it to happen. It happens sometimes. And a lot of people believe that miners violating the first seen policy was never going to become a problem. Most of the people on the Bitcoin Cash side, the people that split off from Bitcoin in 2017 after the block size wars, they believe that miners are never going to, miners care about Bitcoin. They're never going to violate the first seen policy. So this is no longer true. Like 70% of miners, I think, today violate the first seen policy and do something called full RBF. So full RBF is actually a modus of MEV in Bitcoin. It's a way for you to generate more revenue than other miners are generating by doing something that is non-standard. But now, if we say that standard now is to just include all the most profitable transactions that you see, well, so let me give some examples of what MEV on Bitcoin can look like. So when we mine this 4 megabyte block with Luxor mining, the inscription 652, the big Taproot wizard, I just remember that I didn't explain exactly what Taproot Wizard is or why it's called Taproot Wizard, but so let me just do that like super quick. So Taproot was the latest upgrade in Bitcoin, and people in the Bitcoin industry had been promoting Taproot as an idea, as a protocol change that would create smart contracts on top of Bitcoin. And with these smart contracts, Ethereum would basically become obsolete because we would have a level of expressiveness in Bitcoin smart contracts that would like be able to compete with Ethereum. So people were saying like Taproot is going to blow your mind, and if you actually looked into what Taproot was doing, it was a very minor scalability improvement because you could sort of make a multi-sig look like a single sig, so it didn't need to take up more space in the blockchain. It also increased the privacy because you had Schnorr signatures, so it's not visible on the blockchain if you are a 2 out of 3 signature or a single signature in a multi-sig. It looks the same, so it gives you some more privacy. But people were blowing this out of proportion and thinking that we were going to have smart contracts on Bitcoin, and people were saying that that's what they wanted. And then, a year after Taproot was upgraded, we still had like less than 1% adoption of Taproot, and there was basically no one doing anything that had any material. Like maybe some people had some fee savings somewhere, maybe some people had some privacy advantages somewhere, but Bitcoin is still not scalable or private, so it's like a really like small change. Anyway, so Ordinals use Taproot. So when we created these wizard JPEGs, that was the most successful application of Taproot and has brought Taproot adoption from 1% to 70% now. So this is why like we're making magic with we're calling it magic basically because Luke Jr. he's the longest tenured core developer of Bitcoin. He calls Ordinals an exploit. He's saying that Casey Rothermore, that invented the Ordinals protocol, lied and tricked the code when he wrote a Bitcoin script that allowed you to embed arbitrary data into blocks without triggering any of the like standardness or filtering rules. So this is why like Taproot wizards are like making Bitcoin magical again with Taproot. Anyway, going back to the MEV. So the example where Luxor mining steps away from this policy rule that you should only mine a transaction if it's 400 kilobytes large, and actually makes an entire block a single transaction. That is, and they can generate profit. They're doing something. They charge us I think a small premium. I think the premiums for that has gone up significantly since then, but we did pay them a premium. So that is a form of MEV. If you're willing to rewrite your Bitcoin Core node or whatever software that you're using to produce blocks to obviate or abandon standardness rules, that's a form of MEV. So that is one form of MEV that exists on the Bitcoin blockchain. But there's also other types. So also in the Ordinals protocol, there's something called, and I don't engage in this nonsensical activity myself. I'm not angry at people that do it, but there are people that have decided that each Satoshi so that's the minimum, that's like the way in ETH, so like the smallest unit of the smallest decimal point of a Bitcoin is called a Satoshi. Right. So there are some people that have decided that some of them are rare. Like the first one that is mined out of a difficulty adjustment is rare, and they have these different ways to make different Satoshis rare. And so miners can, if they want to, they can be aware, they can run the Ordinals protocol and be aware of which Satoshis are rare, and make sure that all of them are that they, as the pool, hold on to these rare Satoshis. So the pool has a way to access MEV here. So they don't distribute these rare Satoshis to the other hashers. They just collect them in a wallet.
Yeah, I think AmpPool is doing this right now, or or F2 Pool.
F2 Pool is the one that I've seen that does it. F2 Pool also does another thing that's that is interesting, and even more like with each example, I'm aiming to bring you closer to something that looks more like MEV, that in the way that
that's what we want to get into
on Ethereum.
Yeah.
So F2 Pool, one thing that they do, so there's a protocol called Stacks, which is like a sidechain to Bitcoin.
Yes.
And they have something they basically have like each Stacks block is an auction. You have the ability to create the next Stacks block by sending Bitcoin to a specific address, and then you get to mine the Stacks block reward. It's like a lottery based on like how many Bitcoins you sent in, and I think you have a larger chance to win the Stacks block reward. So it's like basically like an auction for STX tokens for the Stacks protocol that's ongoing all the time. So, but if you're a miner, you can just like censor all the other participants in the auction, and you can send a stink bid for like a couple of Satoshis, and then you'll get the full STX block reward. So if you're censoring other Stacks related transactions, then you as a miner will always be able to get STX for an extremely low price, and then you can just dump it the same second that you get it, and now you have a profit. That is clear MEV that exists on Bitcoin today. And interestingly enough, this is not because of the Ordinals protocol. This is not something that happened due to Taproot or anything else. This is something that can happen to any type of protocol that builds on top of Bitcoin. Ordinals and inscriptions that just basically opened up the door for way more of this activity to exist on top of Bitcoin. So those are some of the examples that I can remember from the. Oh well, actually, a better, perhaps an even more interesting example here is, so the Ordinals market, the NFTs, there is a way to make decentralized trades between Bitcoin and Ordinal NFTs. And that's using something called pre-signed Bitcoin transactions. So what it basically means is that a Bitcoin transaction, let's say it looks like a box, and it contains several inputs and outputs. So that can be one person sending some Bitcoin to another person, and then it can be another Satoshi getting sent to another person in the same transaction. So you can basically, one transaction can basically create like an atomic swap. So there's actually two trades happening at the same time inside a block, because I get your Satoshi and you get my Satoshi. And if now the Ordinals protocol is involved, where this Satoshi now represents an NFT, not the Bitcoin, it's going to represent some small Bitcoin residual Bitcoin value anyway, because that's how the protocol works. But you can have 5 Bitcoin here and then some Satoshis here. And when you swap them to different outputs, and the buyer controls one of the outputs and the seller controls one of the outputs, that's an atomic transaction. So how these trades are conducted is that you'll basically have a seller who wants to sell an ordinal, create a partially signed Bitcoin transaction and say to the world, here's the ordinal that I want to sell. This is how much money that I want to get for it. If you take this half complete Bitcoin transaction and you fill it up with the appropriate amounts, so that the transaction is complete, then you can broadcast that to the network. And when it gets mined, I get the Bitcoins that I wanted, and you get my Satoshi. That's a PSBT swap, a pre-signed Bitcoin transaction swap. However, when people are sort of issuing an NFT collection this way, and these pre-signed Bitcoin transactions are getting flooded over into the mempool, what a miner can do is, like, you can look at all those transactions and be like, well, actually, I wanted to be the one that participated in this PST swap, so I'm just going to throw you out of the transaction and fill it up with my inputs and outputs. So when you have a collection that is, for example, doing a free mint, like here's a popular artist making a free mint, or because NFT issuers generally want to have the mint at below market prices, because they want their community to be up, right? You want your whole community to be 2 or 3 times up from their buy price, so they're like loving you and spreading your message and promoting you and like allowing you to make more collections and stuff like that. So those having access to those mints are usually like whitelisted processes. Oftentimes they're whitelisted, so that you're only allowing people that have like showed like some interest in your project previously and like is a distinct person, something like that. So what we had a couple of occasions where, and this was not the case that it was a miner that was doing this, but it was a bot that was running that just looked at the mempool and then just replaced those pre-signed Bitcoin transactions with their own minting inputs and outputs, and set a higher fee rate. And because most of the Bitcoin miners are using full RBF these days, they would mine those transactions instead. And so people were able to basically front run these NFT mints.
These are people effectively not getting their orders filled, to be clear. So like you're attempting to purchase an NFT, somebody comes in and snipes it from under you because they can fill this order. I mean, I'm trying to sort of simplify this. So yeah, okay. I would concede this is a form of MEV.
And especially if you're a miner, because then the bots can front run as much as they want, and the miner's just gonna
rake in the fees.
They're just gonna throw the bots' transactions out, and ultimately put their own transactions in. So that is a form of MEV. So now it comes down to like, the people that are trying to use the protocol has to be aware of how the system functions and what the miners can do, and build like MEV safe auctions and mints basically. But yeah, we do have a situation where there's MEV on Bitcoin. That's the reality of the situation, and it didn't come with inscriptions and ordinals. Inscriptions and ordinals basically exacerbated the problem, made it more visible. And it also created like what we call like a season 2 in Bitcoin, such that there's a lot more money to be made flipping various Bitcoin native assets, native Bitcoin associated assets that have their home on Bitcoin, essentially. So there's more demand for that right now, and so MEV is coming back. Is coming to Bitcoin in a very serious way.
Yeah. Okay. Let's like zoom out a teeny bit, and I'm going to provide some context. And this isn't intended to be too critical towards Ethereum, but fundamentally, what I see, I mean, outside of users getting front run and background and sandwich, the larger problem here is sort of what I would consider to be the economies of scale that develop from MEV, right? Like, so these builders and these validators, are they benefiting? Are they benefiting in an outsized way? And I think you would agree with this. I think most everybody who believes in the theory of blockchains, if you will, that one of our goals, one of our fundamental pillars of these systems is that we want to make it very costly to censor, right? So you can censor a blockchain, right? If you can propose the block, you can censor. And indeed, people will censor. what I think is concerning, and this is sort of like I'm attempting to kind of create some overlap here, you'll understand, with Ethereum, is that we are observing right now this occurring on Ethereum. And like once again, I'm not intending to just I do enough trolling on Twitter. I don't think I need to be too caustic in how I explain this, but we have effectively two builders that are building 60 to 70% of the blocks. We also know it's no secret who these builders are. Like we know who are behind most of the blocks being built on Ethereum. We also recently had Blockstr, which is a relay and also just another MEV shop, say that they will be censoring OFAC transactions, right? The bigger idea here for me is, in theory, right? Like, if once again, going back to sort of first principles, this is something I'm saying now that I'm a podcaster. Going back to first principles, our goal is that if somebody is going to do this, this should almost be a death knell of sorts for their business, right? Like, over a sufficient sample size, they cannot be profitable censoring transactions. And I think that this is I genuinely believe some of the smartest people in the world are working on MEV, but sometimes I think that we should zoom out and at least repeat this kind of premise, right? Like, which is that if it is not costly to censor a blockchain, because you can make a lot of money with all the liquidity you have on Binance, right? Because you have a constant 12-second arbitrage on Ethereum. If you can make a lot of money for these sort of exogenous financial activities, this is like really bad. Like, this is very, very bad. And I think that what the Bitcoin community is seeing to some extent, and you're spot on, there's no way to prevent this. And I think that I've seen a lot of compelling arguments that, you start censoring, you start filtering, you're ruining the mempool, and this just exacerbates the problem. So I'm generally on board with this. I think what is concerning, and this just applies to these systems as a whole, is what are we doing to make it costly to censor? And maybe if you want to sort of give your thoughts on this with regards to Bitcoin. I don't know. I just thought I'd zoom out for a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So this is a super important conversation, and
thank you.
No, so and I don't think that I don't think that people. I don't think that people have done the topic justice either. I mean, I don't know if you remember like the Black Flag movement. It was very like a flash in the pan. You're not going to remember it, but it was when censorship was starting to happen after the merge, where there was only
you wrote an article.
Yeah, I wrote an article, and then few people started wearing like the Black Flag next to their Twitter handles, which basically signaled that if OFAC transactions are no longer getting through into Ethereum, and it's because of OFAC censoring validators, then we're going to slash them. We're not going to slash individual validators that are OFAC compliant, but it's if they go to the extreme where they're also not attesting to blocks that also, right. So like they're not even voting or attesting to others' blocks that include those transactions later. Then I mean, what Vitalik was talking about, like from way back, was that this is why proof of stake is great, because we can surgically target those validators individually and slash them theoretically. Well, but I think that was, it was a moment there where people were like almost they were apathetic in a sense that they were like, oh, OFAC censorship is happening now, and that's too bad. And like, what are you talking about? They're like, this is not something that is bad. Like, crypto doesn't have a purpose at all if this is the case. So like, we have to burn the whole thing down. And if something survives, like, fuck it if all the stable coins die. Like, whatever survives will have more value than the thing that dies. That's my belief. That's why I'm in crypto. Anyway, so I guess the sort of controversial position that I am in right now is that I'm here doing stuff on Bitcoin that has been relatively, it has been, how do I say it? It has been free from these extreme MEV protocols, and we haven't seen the need for hash rate to relocate to go to like
Right.
MEV savvy pools or anything like that yet. But the further along we go in this Bitcoin season 2 ordinal arbitrary block space stuff, the closer we're going to get to Ethereum's problems. And even though that the situation on the validator level has improved on Ethereum significantly, where now
The
you used to have
builders, the relay.
80%. Yeah, exactly. So you used to have 80% of the validators. It means the people that had their stake locked up. 80% of them used to be connected to relays that were censoring, but now it's like 35%. But you have the people that are building the blocks, and they are like 70% censoring. So the problem is just moved around. And
Right.
it comes from what you say, like it comes from economies of scale. When a task requires sophistication and requires, maybe requires geographically distributed nodes, and it requires very modern software. It requires software that's iterated upon to find the best practices to extract MEV. Then you do end up with a pretty centralized pipe. What you end up with, most importantly, is a pretty professional actor, a professional shop.
Yeah, you
that is
got a bunch of
engaging
like MIT quants and supercomputers and a tremendous amount of liquidity.
Yeah,
And that's what you end up with.
and OFAC censorship is not that expensive at the moment. You flag it,
Right.
you just don't pick up a couple of transactions. You don't pick up a set of transactions from the mempool. You don't make blocks out of those transactions. But it's very rare that something is like an OFAC transaction. Most of the time, you're not going to even notice it, right? And the more people do this, like if it gets to a point where like almost everyone is OFAC censoring, then those people are going to stop making transactions on that blockchain. So then you're not even going to be able to see the fees that you're missing out on, because people aren't even using your chain anymore. So there won't even be, your fee revenue won't even be any different from anyone else, because those guys just leave for another system.
Yeah. Well,
so
let me ask you a really quick question. Is his name Chun? I don't want to remember the CEO of, is it F2 Pool? Is it Chun? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Satoshi.
Yes, Satoshi. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of these researchers, and I know you saw this, one of these researchers noticed recently that this pool was more than likely, it's sort of like a probabilistic thing with fee rates and blocks and so on and so forth, but they found that there was probably some OFAC censorship or filtering being done by this pool. And the head of this pool, the CEO, there was so I don't know if I'm sort of using the social layer here when it supports my argument versus condemning the social layer when it doesn't support my argument, but there was some backlash on Twitter. I don't know if I don't know how much the laser eyes got upset, but maybe some of the individual hashers were probably upset about this. And he came out and said, okay, we'll stop filtering. I mean, what do you think? So I don't know if this persists. Like, I don't know if this is something that is sustainable, if a pool can just ignore the rules. But is there something? And I'll finish by saying I tweeted. I mean, it's not that I have a far reach, but I tweeted like, look, this guy got backlash because they were censoring, and he said, okay, fine, I'll stop. Sorry about that. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at, Beaver and rsync filtering OFAC transactions. I'm like, hey guys, why don't you just tell them to stop? Right? Like, so what do you think? Are there advantages that Bitcoin has? Geographic distribution, right? This has long been, or I guess maybe not long been, but more recently been purported as something like, the natural geographic distribution of energy is something we have on our side. And it maybe was coincidental, but it is fortuitous. Is there something advantageous, do you think, in the long run with Bitcoin? And also, I'm not, I troll a lot about Ethereum, but I'm not like, I'm not a hypercritic. Like, what do you think about this? Like, do we have solutions to this?
Yeah. So with Satoshi, the whole reason that he could just like be like, okay, I'll stop, must have been because he didn't have a legal. There was nothing legally binding him to conducting that censorship. If it is the case that he's, I mean, this is the reason that Flashbot censors, right? It's not because Flashbot hates Ethereum and doesn't respect. You have some of the most censorship-minded folks in the world at Flashbots, and I know several of them. But they, with their company structure or however it happened, it was just like they had too many people that were in the U.S., like U.S. domiciled residents, native citizens, that they just couldn't do it because, I mean, and it's not like what we do on the blockchain doesn't lead to you getting thrown into a prison cell. That is like actively happening now. You have Alexei Pertsev and Semenov, the other guy, Roman Semenov, getting thrown into prison cells for we don't know how long. So, like, yeah, at some point, those worries are gonna take hold. And so right now there is not a so validators in Ethereum don't currently have this legal onus on them to censor. That's, at least I saw a Coinbase person at Coinbase who said that there's nothing in the law that makes it so that they have to do OFAC censoring at the validator level. I think that the builders are kind of, they don't give a shit. They're like,
they make so much money. Yeah.
They're making tons of money, and they're like, they don't even have to be, I mean, they're not even visible. Like, people don't even know who they are. With the stakers, we know, okay, this is right. Like Coinbase, and they can get slashed. The builder, you can do nothing to him. Like, how do you punish the builder? So he takes no like community danger to him by censoring. Anyway, I want to sort of make it back to the point with Bitcoin, because I was, on the one hand, that I do feel that Lightning has issues. We need better layer 2 protocols on Bitcoin. And the only way that we can get there is to create a high fee environment on Bitcoin, so that we can, first of all, discover that Lightning sucks and it doesn't work. And that has been happening over the last couple of weeks. And then we need to create a type of protocol that has better user experience, so that people use it non-custodially without even thinking about it. But the risk here then becomes, what if all that, new expressiveness that you need in order to build these better layer 2 solutions, what if that brings MEV to Bitcoin? And then you get into the situation that Ethereum has. So this is where I'm at. Like, this is where my big difficulty is at the moment. Like, I want to bring all this zero knowledge proof stuff into Bitcoin. So if you wonder like how I'm thinking about what my plan is, I think that there are ways that you can construct these layer 2 systems without the MEV necessarily being that big of a problem. So, for example, if you have a roll up and the roll up is sequenced by a permissioned set, and it's a validity roll up, so these permissioned sequencers, even though permission sounds like an extremely bad word, they cannot actually steal your funds. They cannot do anything. They can only put valid transactions on the blockchain. And if for some reason they stop making transactions, then you can always take your funds out of the chain by making an L1 transaction. So that's not necessarily like dangerous to have. But if those sequencers, if they are the ones that are sequencing these transactions, they basically just, what happens from the layer 1 perspective of Bitcoin is that there's just a sequenced batch that comes and embeds itself as an arbitrary data blob. It pays some fee, and that might now be a valuable transaction. But for the miners, they cannot dissect that transaction. So it's just like any other transaction that pays a high fee. So what it can result in is that, okay, what if there's like immense amounts of MEV now happening in the ZK rollup, and you have a block that's like paying huge amounts of like transactions. Maybe the miner didn't like, maybe the miner wants to like reorg the chain back to a time where this block didn't end up in the Bitcoin blockchain, and they try to become like validators in the sequencers in the ZK rollup somehow, so they get to be the ones that mine this extremely valuable block. So there are like reorg risks that can happen when you have very high when you have very, very volatile MEV spikes or like transaction fee spikes on Bitcoin. And I think what MEV creates in Bitcoin, even when you construct it correctly, the worst thing that it creates is that you have this basically, you have one block that maybe pays, could pay like, let's say it pays $300,000 in transaction fees, and then the next block pays $500 in transaction fees. Then you now, as a miner, you have an incentive to reorg those blocks, and just so that other people were in the position of receiving those rewards. But that is a very different problem than the like pipelining, transaction pipeline building problem that we're talking about in Ethereum, the thing that leads to like censorship. So I think that that's something that we can deal with. But that said, though, that the MEV has this tendency to it where like you think that you can encapsulate it. You think that, oh, well, I can confine the process through like a sequencer, or even with the drive chain idea, like Paul Storch has this idea that, well, if you there's something called BIP 301 where you're basically auctioning off the revenue from the drive chain in a single transaction that the miners get to.
I think like, this is a good example from what I have observed with the discussion around drive chains. Is like there's this premise that if you have blind merge mining, right? Like, so that what you're saying, not entirely dissimilar to a ZK rollup, whereby the miner is just always selecting the highest fee from these L2s, right? But the thing is, it's like the blind aspect doesn't really matter, because if they can make to me, okay, so this would be my counterpoint, and I mean, you don't obviously certainly don't have to listen to me, but the way I see it, and I think it's been corroborated by people who do understand this very well, like Shinobi has had very long conversations with Paul Storch about this. If miners can make a lot of money by being effectively the sequencers on these L2s, they're going to want to do that. So like this kind of blind part of it it's almost irrelevant. Now, I know that Paul would fire back about this, but I will say, I have sort of, the way that I view drive chains is I'm not entirely optimistic about it. I'm less, I think you're probably a lot more knowledgeable in the ZK aspect, obviously. And so I'm kind of interested to hear that. But yeah, I think, if miners can make more money, right? Like obviously in validating or sequencing these L2s, like they're going to take that on. And I do think that is, I certainly think that's a risk in terms of centralization.
Yeah, and to summarize that into something, by the way, I don't know. So I think your audience is mostly Ethereum people. I don't know if they're going to understand what the fuck we're talking about at all, because we're talking about so like, nitty-gritty Bitcoin
I don't
stuff.
know who my audience is.
Okay, well, I see you mostly like talking about like Paradigm folks and Hasu and like,
my homies.
But so how I think about this issue is that the issue that we're talking about is that you're basically going to have one chain over here that is going to settle on this other chain over here. And the protocol designers want to make sure that all the MEV sort of gets compressed in the single transaction that gets picked up by the layer one. I think that's like my experience of MEV is that it leaks out everywhere. Like
Right.
if you try to confine it and try to pipe it through this little hole that you want it to go in through, it's going to find some other way to leak in and affect the underlying system. That is my fear. So what I was going to say is that I think that yes, Bitcoin need other layer twos, but I think that we should also learn a lot from the Ethereum space and see like where their struggles has been, and maybe we can build better second layers on Bitcoin than Lightning, but maybe we don't need fully expressive second layers. You can have,
Yeah.
for example, I think an excellent second layer on Bitcoin could be something that, okay, it allows you to do this PSBT swaps, like some swaps with like some very basic DEX swap transactions. Maybe it would be very nice if you could have private transactions in that layer too. So you could have Zcash style privacy transactions, and you could allow for some like covenants and some other things, but you could basically create like a hampered, almost like disabled system that gives you the excellent UX that people have come to experience from some rollups. Like it's super easy. Just give me an address, I'll send it. No routing, no bullshit. Like you can be offline, receive how many payments you want without having any inbound liquidity. And you can also do some pretty interesting like vaulting features, for example, if you want to, like if you wake up and you hear that your wallet got stolen, all your apes or wizards are now on the run, you have like a 24-hour period where you can claw those back to the main wallet and get them back. So like there's some, but there are some things that we want to do with Bitcoin and Bitcoin transactions that we want to do at the layer 2, but we don't need necessarily to invite the entire behemoth of MEV from the get-go. I think that this is going to be for Bitcoin an experimental process where we try some fully like Turing complete, just like doing sovereign rollups, for example. That's happening now anyway. I know multiple teams that are building sovereign rollups. I was in Tel Aviv, I think, was it earlier this year, like championing this idea of like, let's try sovereign rollups on Bitcoin. And now we have like teams that are very close to shipping their proof of concepts, ZK sovereign rollups on Bitcoin. But if this leads to a situation where like MEV is starting to seriously affect the chain, then I hope that in Bitcoin, like we won't like accept. So what the Ethereum idea is that let's just have as much of this as we can, and then let's try to fix the problem at the root, so that we're doing it with like PBS and inclusion lists, so that every validator has a set of transactions that they need to include, and this way censorship cannot happen. But the Ethereum system is still a little bit in flux, I'd say. Are they going to solve it, or are they not? And before we invite like that level of MEV into the Bitcoin system, we should at least see that the Ethereum people have figured it out.
I agree. And also I'm honestly happy to hear you say this, because once again, not to be too critical, but you look at some of these. I think you're kind of referring to this idea of MEV accelerationism. Everything is accelerationism now that we have AI around. Every new tech you want to accelerate as fast as possible. So there's these kind of MEV accelerationists, which are like, the premise is we're going to we're just going to like let it all play out to see where this sort of develops within the cog that is the block building supply chain, right? We'll see where this develops, and then we'll like cut it off at its source, right? With the inclusion list and PBS and trying PBS, and nobody actually knows how that works. And I mean, I am probably very much in agreement with you in the sense that I'm observing what is going on, and I'm saying, okay, there's basically two block builders. I'm being reductive there. There are more than two block builders, but two block builders are building the majority of the blocks. They're making a lot of money doing it. We have a very profitable relay now that's censoring. It's like I don't know. Like, how is this acceleration going for us? I have mixed feelings as well, and I obviously don't have the answers. And I do believe. I mean, I know some of the people at the Ethereum Foundation. I do believe that they are very smart and they understand the problems and they're trying their best. Do I know if this is a solvable problem? I'm unconvinced thus far, but I would generally agree with you insofar as like we should probably observe what's going on before we, you know, tack on drive chains or something sort of drastic that really could mess with the incentive structures.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to think, like, we're getting so deep in the conversation because I am like a drive chain advocate.
Chill.
Yeah, no bags, but I think that the situation that we've gotten into with like Lightning and the lack of privacy for Bitcoin is right now the fears of MEV on drive chains. I think that they are there, like for sure. Like I said, with this blind merge mining thing, you're still going to end up in a situation where miners might be incentivized to fee snipe each other. There may be some increased reorg risk, and also to your point, like that, yeah, miners may also run more powerful software to like engage directly in the MEV extraction themselves. But there's also like what's on the other side of that equation. On the other side of that equation is that we don't have working like transactional layers with good UX. We basically on the other side of the equation, you have 95% using custodial wallets with zero privacy, and that is also not a fantastic. So I'm thinking that you have to pick your poison, and yes, drive chains has a little bit of poison in it. ZK rollups, fully expressive ZK rollups, also has a little bit of that poison in it. However, there's not that much that we can like. Oh, okay, we're not gonna like let that happen because, as I explained, it already exists through stacks, right? Stacks also introduces that same problem.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, okay, so I would generally agree with that. I would also say that Stacks is a relatively small percentage, of Bitcoin transactions. So I like
it's just because they're unsuccessful. If Stacks was a
right,
more successful protocol, there would be more MEV there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
certainly.
So,
what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm just saying that we cannot sort of take the other side here in favor of the we have this EAC, DAC, and in Bitcoin we can call it like BAC. So to their point is that these problems already exist anyway, regardless if you work towards creating sovereign rollups on Bitcoin or you enable drive chains. It's not to say that problem wouldn't have shown, because right now it is showing its face. It's in a small extent with with F2 pool and with this auction that they're running on Stacks. But if you start to have massive amounts of MEV on Stacks, well, then people are going to start to want to become Stacks block producers, and they're going to collaborate with miners and reorg the block order and make sure that their Stacks block gets included, not the other guys. So, I mean, to their point, like the cat is like out of the bag with its ears at the moment, and we can like try to strangle Bitcoin and try to play it very, very safe, and ultimately hamper like years and decades of innovation and like product and tooling that could have happened for drive chains, just because we were afraid of a problem that we would have faced eventually anyway. Maybe the solution for Bitcoin is going to have to be something like CR lists, inclusion lists on Bitcoin 2 in the end anyway. So it's not. I'll summarize. I'm torn on this issue. I'm torn. It's a complicated issue. I don't know what's right.
Yeah. No, I think I'm probably torn as well. I will say, not to be too critical of Paul Stork here, but I hear him.
Paul Stortz.
Storts. Oh, okay. I thought it was Stork. Okay.
Yeah,
Storts.
it's a weird. Yes. Yeah.
Paul Storts.
Weird name.
When he is sort of presented with this premise that, this peg system could enable miners to sort of control these side chains, he comes back with this idea that miners selling T-shirts is an example of MEV. And I'll be quite honest here. When I hear this, it's like, this is so very clearly not what we're talking about. It kind of makes me concerned that Paul or the drive chain premise has not fully thought this through. And I mean, I know he's being reductive intentionally, right? But this is like saying that Beaver Build selling keychains at ETH Denver is MEV. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you can say that. Like, you can say whatever you want, but like, those are very clearly just words. So, I mean, I have had, I'm probably in the same boat insofar as I want to see experimentation. I want to see innovation. I think that I am probably a bit more on the side as somebody who has, I actually intended to sort of talk about this at the beginning, but we just
But what if the t-shirts become like 50% of the revenue and all the other miners go bankrupt?
Well, no.
Every miner has to become a t-shirt producer, right, in order to stay competitive.
But I think that there's been very compelling arguments that the economies of scale in developing software and being able to order transactions is quite different than the economies of scale that are represented by selling T-shirts at a conference. So, I mean,
I don't know. Weirder things have happened. Monkey pictures sold for $500,000.
Well, those were worth
I don't know. Yeah, I'm just saying that. You said it's a reductive argument. I think that, Paul makes these weird arguments and they sound insane to people. To me, he reminds me of my dad, because my dad used to make these kinds of arguments and he sounded insane to everyone. But I think I have like an autistic gene that allows me to be like, fuck yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, I can channel that autistic energy.
Paul is clearly very bright and he's trying something. So I'm not trying to pile on. I will say, when I hear that, and having myself observed at the very least, right? Like, I'm not a searcher, I'm not a builder, but like, having observed Ethereum,
he's not going to win the argument by saying that. That's the
right. Yeah. What do you think is the difference between experimentation and innovation? And here's why I ask this, okay? I think that there are Bitcoiners, right, who want to see innovation. I genuinely do. I think, now, I would generally agree with you that a lot of the Bitcoin community has not really wanted to see that. They want to see ossification. They want to see buy your Bitcoin and send it to your cold card and go and live on your Citadel, right? And have 10 children. I would generally agree that these people may not be inclined to look outside and see what else is going on, right? But I do think there are Bitcoiners who do want innovation. They want to see Bitcoin being used in practical ways. You guys just hired one at Taproot Wizard, somebody who I really respect. I've listened to a lot of his podcasts. I think he is brilliant. Is it? I always mispronounce his name, and I already asked you how to pronounce it. Rindal. Okay. I think there are people who want to see. You said that like you don't actually know how to pronounce it.
It's because it's not his real name. It's an anon name. So
it's like an old. I actually looked this up. It's like an old. Is it like an old cryptography protocol or something? Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, see, I'm telling you about your own employees.
Okay.
Sorry, to get back to this question. I think there are people who want to see innovation, right? And I would consider myself one of those, not important, but consider myself one of those. But I have spent probably the last 2-3 years mainly interested in crypto as a whole, right? Like I've always considered myself a Bitcoiner, but I've been more interested in crypto. But I think one interesting thought that I've had, maybe with regards to how you interact with some of the Bitcoin community, is are there people who also want innovation, but when maybe you and Udi and some other people are saying, look at what Ethereum's doing, look at all of the innovation and experimentation elsewhere, and they're saying, look, I want innovation, but like I'm just not so very convinced that this is that innovative, right? And so this is like, I think sometimes I wonder if it's less about people being very sort of turned away from changing Bitcoin or making it more productive versus what we define as innovation first. Like we have to maybe agree on what is innovation before we can disagree as to whether or not we need it. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
I have a problem in the sense that I'm too honest. I'm gonna say stuff that's gonna make it more difficult for me to do my job. But I agree with you in the sense that it's been kind of disappointing. I've been promoting Ethereum for a long time, right? So I've been on podcasts talking about the wonderful potential of decentralized finance, DeFi. And 4 years ago, I was sitting on podcast and I was saying, well, you can be in Africa and you have some Bitcoin and you're getting a salary next month, but you need to spend some money now. Well, you can now trustlessly put it into Compound and take a USD loan and then spend that. And then when you get your money, you get your Bitcoin back. It's like it's without any intermediaries or KYC or anything, you can now get a loan on your collateral. Okay. And that's just like an early primitive. And there's also auctions and like all these kinds of stuff, right? But I haven't myself used this once, like this ability to take that loan even once. So DEXs I use a lot. So I use decentralized exchanges a lot. But what are the assets that I'm swapping between? It's usually like all the tokens that we have are usually related to more infrastructure. It's like infrastructure protocols. Infrastructure for what? What is the ultimate use case that all that infrastructure and liquid staking tokens and all that, what is it all producing? Like, what is the use case? And it's like still these like maybe some over collateralized lending that some people may use, and I don't know, leverage trading. That's not really like super valuable to humankind. But
no, I mean
we're kind of lacking on the application layer, right? And I have this one thing that's called Orbland that's like uses a blockchain, is really easy to build, makes sense to have on a blockchain, and there's other nice things to it, but it's not like that product could not exist at all on a Web2 platform. So yeah, it's like when you're saying like why does Bitcoin like need to learn so much from Ethereum when Ethereum is like 70% censored at the builder level, and it seems like stake is just getting rehypothecated endlessly through native yield blast eigenlayer stuff. Like the consensus that with Vitalik did not want to be overloaded. I'm sorry, it's getting very overloaded in various ways. And like, what do they have to show for it? Like, what is it that is so awesome with Ethereum and all this infrastructure? Like, what makes it worth it? And I'll say, so what my answer is that the simple answer that we still cannot get away from is that Lightning is a bad protocol to make peer-to-peer transactions with. And Lightning is the only layer 2 solution that Bitcoin is able to have to do like transactions at scale.
It's also the only real layer 2.
Except for Fuel, which is the
Fuel
version 1. Fuel version 1 with a total TVL of $528 is a real optimistic roll-up that is also a real layer 2.
Shout out Fuel.
One other point, I wanted to make another point on that. By the way, have you seen this? Have you seen this conversation between David Hoffman and Dankrad Feist?
Yes, regarding data availability layer,
yeah, and what constitutes a roll-up. And Dankrad, and Hoffman is saying, well, now you can have roll-ups with all kinds of data availability modes, and you can use Celestia. By the way, I'm a Celestia investor, but I'm actually going to say some things slightly negative about Celestia here, so it's fine. Anyway, so what the main innovation here is that we've made it socially acceptable to call roll-ups that use other chains for their data availability to be roll-ups that are just modular and just use other. Like that those used to be not called roll-ups. That was the definition of not being a roll-up when you have your data not on your chain, right? But now we call them roll-ups. So now roll-ups can change their DA mode, cut 95% of their costs, and still be called a roll-up. So obvious choice for many roll-ups, like, okay, we can throw out 95% of our costs, and there's just some nerds like Dankrad that's going to say, that's actually not a roll-up, though. An even more interesting point to that is dank sharding. So with dank sharding, that is a new mode for Ethereum to save its for storing its call data. But those data blobs are ephemeral, and full nodes will generally prune them after like a period of 2 weeks. So the data even on Ethereum will not be like default stored by the nodes forever. So rollups on Ethereum are also not rollups, because the definition of a rollup is a layer 2 system that by default the full nodes of the system store that data. So Ethereum rollups are also not rollups post dank sharding, so then Dankrad can't really have that argument anymore, so the whole thing sort of dissipates. By the way, what was the thing that we were talking about right before that, before I went on that tangent?
The last thing I recall, I was so entranced by what you were saying. The last thing I recall was experimentation, innovation, layer 2s.
Yeah. So I was talking about Lightning. Yeah. So
there we go. Yes, Lightning. The only real L2, and then you said Fuel.
Yeah. So Fuel exists. Is a real roll up. But I mean, for me, it all comes down to we need good layer 2 wallets for Bitcoin to make cheap payments with static non-custodial receive addresses, with high degrees of privacy, with no inbound liquidity, and that is not possible with the current set of features of the Bitcoin layer 1. That is fundamentally impossible. So we need better layer 2 solutions. So I'm actually not saying that we need all that DeFi nonsense bullshit, NFT garbage crap, and MEV that leads to censorship. I'm just saying we need better layer 2 solutions. And in order for me to reach that goal, I have to change Bitcoin. And because you cannot just go and change Bitcoin without changing the culture of Bitcoin. So right now, what Taproot Wizards are about is to promote and create a new culture in Bitcoin by, number one, making the current set of Bitcoiners so fucking frustrated that they'll fork themselves off the chain in order to censor ordinals or something like that. But also sort of inviting another type of community that was more on the fence, and there was nothing for them in Bitcoin. Going to the conferences and meeting a bunch of insane people talking about their weird food habits, and sunbathing their balls and whatever these people do. that was not so that there hasn't been like a compelling entry point into Bitcoin before. So we can create an influx of new users. That's sort of the main goal. But we can sort of make Bitcoin suck so much for the ones that are already in it that they'll be less engaged or even wanting to fork themselves off. And then we will create a layer 2 solution with the right set of attributes so that we can actually transact non-custodially with Bitcoin. That is the end goal. And like our method of getting there may be like incredibly frustrating and insulting to people, but I do think, I have spent like years and years and years thinking about this, like how do I achieve this goal, and and this is the best and most productive, and I've never seen people. I don't know if you saw actually I have coincidentally I have it here, this little tungsten cube from
Yes.
Brad Mills.
Oh, he sent it. Yeah.
He paid for it, so I'm not gonna dox my address. So I have I have my assistant buy the cubes, and then I take the payment from the person who's supposed to pay it. So Brad, by the way, lost the tungsten. He had to pay me a tungsten cube because he bet that Ethereum was going to go below $500 this last year. Brad, by the way, is one of the primary promoters of the Lightning Network, and Brad was like asking a question on Twitter like a couple of months ago, like why. Like I'm trying to send a payment to a person, but like I have a channel opened, but like it keeps running out of inbound liquidity, and even though I'm increasing the inbound liquidity, like I'm opening a new channel, nothing happens. And so what basically happens under the hood, when the fees are very high and you're opening a new channel, that channel capacity, that miner fee is going to come out of your channel capacity. So if the channel fees are very high, it becomes very difficult to open like more to splice in more extra liquidity for your channels. So he was just in a situation where he kept running out of inbound liquidity, and this is the first time that Brad actually had to learn about inbound liquidity and how it actually functions. And I mean, the idea for Bitcoin to be secure is that we'll have high on-chain fees without the block reward, right? So this is the environment that Lightning needs to survive in. Then after Brad lost the cube, unrelated to that, I wanted to torture him a little bit more. So I told him to send me $428 over the Lightning Network, and I just, I did what people said. I just downloaded people talk about the Phoenix wallet, which is a non-custodial Lightning wallet. So I have a Phoenix wallet, put some Satoshis in it, and then I asked Brad to send me some money. Of course, it doesn't work because I don't have inbound liquidity to my node. So then we have to figure out like how do we solve that problem. And then when we noticed that Brad had sent me like a little bit not enough money, and then he like had to splice in more liquidity, like going on chain again and again, we came to the problem that he couldn't even pay me like the exact amount that I needed, because each time like there's this on-chain fee that gets subtracted unless he opens like a very big channel to me. And so I had to like send him Satoshis back, and it was just this 48-hour trial and an error where there's no route, and there's not enough inbound liquidity, and there's no way for you to pay me the exact amount. So there was this one guy who goes on Twitter by the name Ben the Carmen. He has a wallet called the Mutiny Wallet, and Ben was like reading that thread, and he was sending me like invite codes so that I could test his wallet in beta. But he's like a Lightning developer and like a good faith, not like me and Udi trolling Bitcoin. Like he's a Bitcoiner trying to build like Lightning, Lightning Maxi essentially. And he just, I think he read that thread, that the whole thread that I was trying to pay Brad, and he wrote this this post on Stacker News, where he basically we're just like, these are all the fucking problems with Lightning, and some of them are like fundamentally unfixable, and maybe actually Lightning is not this end user. This point has been made made before by other people, but this time it's like by a Lightning developer. And people have now gone through a whole year of trying to use Lightning and having like forced channel closures and like trying to onboard people in South Africa and haven't been successful due to the on-chain fees. And people are now like, we're now at the point where they're willing to take in that message. So now you have like Samson Moe from Blockstream and Brad, like they're retweeting this article by Ben the Carman, and everyone's just like basically admitting that this is not working. The ending of Ben the Carman's post was that we need covenants because covenants open up a new programmatic paradigm in Bitcoin that actually does get us like covenants is a powerful upgrade for Bitcoin. Doesn't give us it doesn't give us MEV and Ethereum problems immediately, but it's like a little step on the way there. But that's a step that we have to take because we cannot stay here and be like, okay, Lightning sucks this much and it's fundamentally unfixable in many ways, and everyone is going to use it custodially. And now either you're now like an ETF person and that's how you hold your Bitcoin, or you're like a person that tries to use Bitcoin and 95% of you are using it custodially because the UX challenges of using Lightning are like just so harsh that you end up using it custodially. That cannot be the end state of Bitcoin. So we have to move forward. So like all these questions, like, is it worth it? Like, where are we going? We have to move away from this being the state of layer 2 systems on and the interesting thing, I was going to say I'll leave you with some last words here, but I don't know if we're quite ready to wrap up yet. But Gregory Maxwell, the Dumbledore of Bitcoin that we talked about earlier in the beginning of this show, his 2013 forum blog posts talked about zero knowledge proofs being the ultimate way to compress blockchain transactions. And then that math, when he was discovering it, he actually went to Eli Ben Sasson's presentation in 2013 and was blown away about Starks, away by the power of Starks, and saying like this is obviously the way. And there's also some talks about from Hal Finney, like discovering like the power of zero knowledge. So all these elders were of Bitcoin. They were like aware of this magic of zero knowledge proof that had the ability to privatize, make anonymize and make scalable large amounts of transactions without using channels. The math wasn't ready then, though. The math was moon math, immature, like not scalable enough. Like running provers and verifiers were just too expensive at the point. Now that technology is actually ready for it's been done by the Ethereum and zero knowledge domain. It's pretty much like you could run this on Bitcoin now quite successfully. But during the block size wars, it's not like Greg Maxwell could have said then, hey, let's like fuck a block size increase. Let's just do validity rollups or validiums or whatever. The only viable solution at that point in time was let's try these channel-based solutions. And yes, there are challenges with them, with the inbound liquidity, but that is the safest solution that we have right now while preserving the block size. But the ultimate goal, like what the elders did want, were something zero knowledge based. And I think ultimately that is where we're going to end up. And the conversation that you and I are now having is, well, how much MEV does that introduce? So that comes down to how much do you want to confine the scripting language of these zero knowledge execution environments that you ultimately enable.
Going back to the block size wars, you were involved. I was not. You were there on the Reddit forums. I was not. I was live, but I wasn't there. Correct me if I'm sort of misrepresenting this, but I think that one of Bitcoin's narratives thus far, and I'm really simplifying this, has been blockchains don't scale, one, and two, the question is up in the air, and I think most people lean towards no. do we scale blockchains with more blockchains, right? And this is something that Ethereum dove into, right? After they figured out that sharding is actually really hard, they said, okay, we're going to go with this roll-up centric roadmap. We're going to change the name a little bit to dank sharding. So we still have the sharding in there. But in reality, we're going with this roll-up centric roadmap, right? And I mean, me not excessively technical, I'm still looking at this and I'm saying, okay, we can optimize these rollups, but we still run into the same problems in many ways that we do with layer one blockchains, right? And right now, as you said, as you mentioned earlier, with a lot of these Ethereum L2s, I mean, you still need to come to consensus on blocks and how blocks are ordered. Ironically, and I troll about this a good bit, the way you end up sequencing those blocks, or the long-term vision, or one of the visions for how you sequence those blocks, is another blockchain, right? Shared sequencers or some variation of this. So I think that, I'm probably somewhere in the middle, and also not that my opinion really matters, but I'm curious, like what is to you? I mean, is the ZK rollup, is this the end game, right? And then what you were saying, like the degree of expressivity, I think is very important, right? Because this is like that is when you introduce how much can you extract, how centralized can this get? It's not immediately clear to me how you decentralize L2s. I think that like Ethereum is still contending with this. Yeah, I don't know. I'll let you go ahead. These are just questions that are, I think, still coming to a lot of people's minds.
Yeah. I actually like the idea that you have a set of sequencers. I'm talking now about the MEV problem and the expressiveness problem. I like the model where, and maybe this is naive, maybe it's not going to work out, but I currently like this model. You have a set of sequencers that are expected by the roll-up token holders. And now I'm saying token holders, not necessarily a fee token, like not necessarily the gas token, just a governance token. The sequencers are allowed by just social a social how do you say code between them by the token holders and the sequencers. They're allowed to like extract benign MEV and transaction fees. So benign MEV is like you get the first pick to liquidate a vault, a CDP maker vault that needs to be liquidated, and take the fees from that. Something that you actually do want to happen as soon as possible. So you want people to sort of rush and do that. And arbitrage also, like making the prices correct between different AMMs, just gives better prices for everyone. That is also like benign MEV. So we let them do that, but we don't let them engage in like malicious types of MEV, where maybe they're front running people, sandwiching, back running people in a negative way, giving people worse prices. And the community has the ability to throw out sequencers that they don't like and just install new sequencers that they do like. Maybe that model works. I don't know. So then maybe you can have a rollup with expressivity and there is MEV in the system. But if they don't engage in the way that you want them to, then you can perhaps oust them. I know that doesn't maybe necessarily answer your question about the OFAC censoring stuff. Like maybe that's not necessarily, but maybe you can throw the sequencers out if they are OFAC censoring too. Maybe that's but maybe then all the token holders become then liable for that. We have seen other DAOs like get in legal trouble for. So it's not a completely solved problem, but I think that it's like a direction that we can explore. Whether or not like ZK rollups are the end goal, I think. I mean, what would be the other alternative in your view? I think is that like a completely monolithic chain like Solana or like Bitcoin Cash, big blockchain, where everything's like super monolithic?
I admire Solana, but for reasons that probably Solana people don't want me to admire Solana. But I think I am more okay with some of this stuff not existing on Bitcoin. That probably, honestly, if I could synthesize this down to where you and I may disagree just fundamentally, I'm okay using Ethereum. I'm okay using Solana. Like, to me, if there's trade-off models, whatever sort of buzzwords you want to throw in there, in terms of, are you using this for your financial activity versus this? Like, to me, it's okay if we have this. And in many ways, I'm more dogmatic about Bitcoin. I'm like more protective of it, because and this is like me being quite serious right now. I honestly believe that Bitcoin is probably our best chance at creating a decentralized money. Now, a decentralized financial system, conversely, I don't know that this is exactly the same. I would actually probably argue that a decentralized financial system with the rich statefulness and all these interacting contracts and all these people, who may have an edge or whatever, like maybe this opens up a different sort of space. I'm not, I don't have strong conviction one way or another. I would say that I think, like, CTV, from what I understand about it's encouraging, and I'm encouraged that people are. It's for, I don't know if you probably have a better definition. Just check, template, verify. This is a covenant proposal that there's some consensus around. It's quite interesting to see the discussions as to what actually qualifies as consensus. But a lot of the people that maybe I respect right now are pretty keen on this, and I think it opens up. We were talking about the inbound liquidity problem and some of these issues with Lightning. There are some improvements we can make, right? Like with
no, but CTV does not solve like CTV can help with some of the interactivity issues with Lightning, so that you don't need to necessarily be online to receive a payment and stuff like that. Even to make that part good, you may need other codes as well. Like, I think CTV already does this with like the help of checksig from Stack, or might be another one that is needed for it. But so CTV is not going to get you away from the inbound liquidity problem. All channel-based systems, you would have to go towards something like Arc.
Right. But CTV could maybe get us close to Arc, right? Or it needs checksig from Stack as well. Is that correct? Or one of these others?
Yeah, but do you want to take the controversial? Do you want to take the position that Arc is now the non-custodial way that you want to transact with Bitcoin?
No, because I'm not taking any positions.
Oh, okay. No, so I'm at the camp where like Arc is interesting, but it's not the Arc only makes sense if you are in a world where you believe that the layer one that you're working on is exactly like Bitcoin, and then maybe something like CTV or APO on top of it. But that's like a very arbitrary definition of what you want from your base layer. You can go a little bit further and create some type of non-custodial, trustless, like even drive chains, in my opinion, would be probably a better trade-off here. Ultimately, the question comes down to how do you. So yes, I think we're in full agreement, and I've been on like multiple podcasts saying this before, that I absolutely love that Ethereum and Bitcoin are different beasts. Like, it's good that they're very different. They won't fail for the same reasons. That's very like creates resiliency for crypto. It's good that these are in isolation. Very, very important. But we do need a second layer on Bitcoin that is non-custodial and has good UX, in my opinion. Well, that is something that we need. One of my theories for how to solve that, to sort of stroke your multi-chain vision that you seem to like, is there were some attempts from Matt Luongo and James Presswich creating a TBTC, like a synthetic form of Bitcoin that was backed by an over-collateralized amount of Ether on the Ether chain. But that turned out to be like not efficient, because then you don't have an inbound liquidity problem, but you have an over-collateralization problem that sort of makes it inefficient in its own way. So but I was like, okay, it's not the users though. The difference here with TBTC versus Lightning is that you as a user just holding the TBTC, you don't have to care about who actually collateralized this and what's their economic model is and why. So I was actually I was doing like an experiment. I think I was like one of the first users of ZK Sync, where I put TBTC inside ZK Sync and I was sending it around doing the lightning torch experiment, and tons of people participated. We had like a long list of all the people that had held the amount of Bitcoin the TBTC token that was running around in this Ethereum rollup. So like maybe something like Ethereum running an SPV client or something for Bitcoin. Maybe other chains can become the second layer of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin doesn't have to become that. But I still think that something like drive chains or something like a very constrained ZK rollup, or even actually a fully fledged ZK rollup, as long as we get sort of the sequencing of the data confined, so that the only result that you get are like fee spikes on the layer one at worst. I think that those trade-offs is what gets us closest to workable non-custodial wallets for Bitcoin. And I think that we don't have that much time. Like not far from now, the Bitcoin ecosystem is going to ossify around a specific set of trade-offs that then becomes the ones that we get to work with. And if that set of trade-offs doesn't give us a network that can provide non-custodial wallets, then how are we going to do it? I mean, the one side of the one position that one might take, one that Udi takes sometimes, is to say, well, fuck it then. You will own your Bitcoin non-custodially in a hardware wallet or whatever. That's where you will own 90% of it. And then you take 10% and you'll put it into like some multi-sig gizmo, over collateralized or not, just like pretty safe. And the only money that you lose on it is like what you currently have on your debit card, for example.
Right.
And you lose all that, but you still have 90% of your savings. So like that's the most charitable view. I still
Wait,
see
Udi
that
takes that view?
he has done that many times when we've been arguing about this years before.
So would you say that Udi is more on the side of constraining perhaps the expressivity of L2s and the innovations we build out from here, or
no? I would say that Udi at the moment knows that Udi right now knows that before we can even have a conversation around how constrained these layer twos are going to be, we're going to have to shake up and create more chaos in the Bitcoin chain until some change happens. And whether or not that's people saying fuck the wizards, let's do the most constrained covenant that we can think of to just like marginally improve Lightning in some way, that is still an improvement. But so Udi, like his opinion is not that we're going to ossify here and just go with like that's if we lose and Bitcoin ossifies, that's how we'll use Bitcoin then. But that will be like the worst failure mode. But I mean, I guess the upshoot or the silver lining here is that maybe that isn't like a disaster. You don't have to give up on Bitcoin as many Ethereans have done, like just because you'll keep 90% in cold storage and 10% or whatever in yeah. But even then, like even if you have 90% of your funds in cold storage and 10%, where do you keep that other 10% in Lightning, where the user experience fucking sucks and you don't have privacy? So we still got to solve for that, because the fees then are going to be very high on the mainnet, right? So we still need some. Yeah, I keep coming back to the same word. We need a better non-custodial wallet for Bitcoin, and the only way to get there is to break the culture that currently. But actually, honestly, right now, I think that kind of our work is like there's going to be a long journey now of changes happening in Bitcoin in various ways over the next couple of years. But the thing that we were trying to crush, which was this ossification camp, most of them are now talking about like how do we fork out ordinals, so they're not even about ossification anymore.
Yeah.
I think that we've actually, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not like fired up or anything anymore, because I think that, just go and read like Samson Moe's last post where he's talking about the solution for Bitcoin. Obviously, we're just going to run Lightning on Liquid. And Brad Mills is like retweeting this blog post by Ben the Carman about how Lightning is fundamentally like broken. I think it's been admitted now that Lightning is not like this is no longer something that we have to stick in people's faces.
Yeah.
I think like the war, the important part of the war that we all sort of agree and admit that we got to build a better second layer wallet for Bitcoin. I think that there's consensus. There's maybe some people that aren't talking about it, but I feel like we kind of got there now in the end as a Bitcoin community, and we're gonna keep pushing that forward. But
I believe you.
Yeah, but I'm not like before this year. Like it felt like we had to climb like Mount Everest and come back, or like bring a whole family up to Mount Everest and then come, and it feels like we're on our way down from the mountain now, and the sun is rising, and we're excited for what's to come.
Yeah, I think that I'm encouraged. I'm always going to be a bit cynical, but as a general statement, I think that you guys are doing really good work. Let me ask you one more question. We sort of touched on this, but I maybe want to hear like a more comprehensive breakdown. You wrote this article right around the merge, and you effectively said, look, we have to take a stand that if we start seeing censorship in what you were saying, if we start seeing attesters not attesting to OFAC blocks, like
hard censorship.
Yeah, hard, right, exactly.
Hard censorship.
If we start seeing this, we're going to have to take a stand. But more importantly here, I think you were one who sort of, I remember you had a debate with Justin Bonds about 2 years ago. I've done my research. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and you took the side of proof of work, and he took the side of proof of stake, and you were sort of the opinion, look, we need both of these systems, right? Like it's the what is it? The octopus, the tentacles, or
the octopus. The octopus, and I said
Captain Ahab.
The octopus and the gun with one bullet in it. But I said it incorrectly then. But what I meant was, a revolver. Yeah, I said a revolver with one gun in it, but obviously I meant a revolver with one bullet in it. So Bitcoin is the revolver. It has one bullet in it. It's like taking a very simple, like proof of work, no smart contracts, no, we're going to go kill an enemy. We have a gun and a bullet. We're going to go and shoot the guy in the head. But what if the enemy is not that? What if it's a different kind of enemy and you're underwater now facing this enemy? Then maybe you want an octopus, and this Ethereum is my octopus. And then like maybe the octopus is better to fight with underwater. And because we don't know what the ultimate, like we don't know if how the state, I mean, ultimately it's the state that we're fighting, in my opinion. We don't know if the state is an enemy that lives above water or beneath water, where they're going to be the hardest for us to fight. Like, is it the one that is going to say that Bitcoin is environmentally unfriendly, or is it the one that is going to say that Ethereum has a bunch of unregistered securities and illegal casinos, and they come at us at the MEV, like choke us at the MEV transaction building choke points? Like, we don't know where exactly these blockchains are going to fail, but it's very good that we have two very distinct ones. That said, though, I do want the gun to have a non-custodial wallet with a good user experience.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you for elaborating on that. Here's my question. Now it's been, how long has it been since the merge? What is, I don't know, well over a year, right?
1.5 years or something.
Okay. Yeah. So what is your general view on how Ethereum's doing, how the roll-up roadmap? Some of this interest around Solana, especially recently, like sort of this pragmatic approach. I don't know. What are your views on since, let's call it, since the merge, since the transition to proof of stake? Are you optimistic? Like, what do you see as the biggest, choke points or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is some of these things are hard to say.
I was hoping I was going to give you a tough one here.
Like in the same, I used to be, I was so bullish on Lightning, when it came out, and when the white paper came out, and I ran one of the first 500 nodes, and I was like, yeah, I was telling people, well, I will lock up some funds in a wallet, just so that I can pay, so that I can get paid. I won't mind like having my liquidity locked up in a channel. Actually, that's not the problem. The problem is that you need inbound liquidity from someone else. You can't actually give it to yourself with your own liquidity. But I had, so after being a big fan of Lightning, then a couple of years came, and then I started to see that maybe I was the bad guy. Maybe I was the one that wasn't like listening to the people that said that this was an overly complex system. And I'm really afraid, desperately afraid, that I've done the same mistake with rollups. That, the rollups made so much sense when they were just like these trustless side chains to Ethereum. Like, why wouldn't that be awesome? Like new execution environments, new like types of smart contract languages that you could use, completely different privacy characteristics. Fucking awesome, right? But then, of course, you're going to want tokens for these. I'm not actually against tokens. Like I mentioned in my previous example, having token holders, having the ability to sort of vote out bad sequencers, that is good, like so that you have some type of governance functions inside the rollup. Because, I mean, at least in a ZK rollup, you can't do anything bad. You can only you have some validators that can only do good things. You can replace them with other validators that can do good things. There's no real danger here that this governance capture is going to destroy the system by putting bad validators there. They still can't do anything bad. Problem though, I think, is that, well, if you have a new blockchain and you have a new token, that's now completely its own blockchain, and there are going to be ecosystems over there, and there's going to be ecosystems over there, and some of the smarter people that I know on like cross rollup interactions, like Georgios, has been telling me that it's going to get solved. I actually have a call with Mihailo from Polygon. He wants to introduce me to his Polygon CDK, like how it works. I think that the solution that they have is some type of, well, you can have a bunch of rollups, but if they all use the same sequencer, like a shared sequencer, then the problem of like liquidity transferring between the rollups is actually solved. So that is something that I'm still gonna have to investigate. I hope that there's something promising there, like that the shared sequencers, without turning the whole of the system into a single blockchain in some way. Like I don't know what the trade-off is here of doing that. So I'm at the place now where, yeah, I was really bullish on rollups before. Some of these composability issues that I hand waved in the same way I did with inbound liquidity for Lightning, it's coming back up, and it's like, the dildo of consequences that is not lubed rears its head once again. I'm not as fearful for rollups as I am currently for Lightning with the issues that Lightning has faced, but it's because I've had more time wrestling with the challenges of Lightning than I've had with rollups. So we haven't seen the end, and there's also there's stuff that is happening with recursive zero knowledge proofs. So you can have what Vitalik calls the proof of proofs. So you sort of have zero knowledge systems that can all compile down to other zero knowledge proofs, and like you have a root proof that supposedly solves some of the composability issues and cross system liquidity issues. Frankly, my answer is I don't know if the end final state of rollups is going to be one that is going to have a user experience that is going to be sufficient. But what I do know, I know two things. I know, number one, if you say, well, fuck it, we can't do it with these roll-up systems, and the cross roll-up communication is not going to work, you can still get much further with like instead of having Solana, you put the Solana virtual machine and you put it on a data availability layer. You're still going to reach better scale with that system than just Solana as a single monolithic system. So like a single roll-up with a disconnected data availability layer that focuses only on that, I still think is like superior to a monolithic chain. So I wouldn't say like, let's all go home, this roll-up mission is a clusterfuck. Still think that roll-ups are less of a clusterfuck than sharding. The original sharding plans were, but there is something better than fully monolithic also.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let me just add one. Okay, can I just ask you one last question quickly? Do you wonder if Ethereum is going to be kind of this chain that just ultimately accepts proofs from all of these rollups? Do you sort of wonder why the L1 is still Turing complete? Like, I'm being reductive here, but you see what I'm saying.
No.
Yeah,
it's a completely valid question. It's the right question, and actually, this is the case that I make like for Bitcoiners. Ethereum has a fundamental architectural mistake or flaw, in the sense that it has this the EVM, which is sort of hostile to be zero knowledge proven, even though it's getting better. You have these applied cryptographers that just keep making these insane improvements all the time, so it just keeps getting better. But no, what you do want at the base layer is an environment that is only designed to process zero knowledge proofs. So, I mean, this is not controversial. Vitalik has said it himself in private conversations that I think he wishes that Cairo, I don't know if it's, so this is like maybe a 6-month-old opinion of his, that Cairo would be better as the native execution environment and language for Ethereum than Solidity. So this is something that we as Bitcoiners can sort of learn from, that, okay, well, they fucked up. Now they have this Solidity garbage, EVM garbage on their layer one. We could just have a system for verifying zero knowledge proofs in a constrained way, and it would be much better way to design the system.
Yeah. Well, Eric, thank you so much. Thanks again so much for being my first guest ever. We'll see if I have any career in podcasting. I thought it was great. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I liked it. And good luck to the rest of your show. Nice meeting you, Gort.
Thank you. Yeah, right, good to meet you too.
All right, bye-bye.